Today we are speaking to one of our favorite guests. It's the Muslim Family Law Hub. So we've been having these incredibly insightful conversations these past few months. Of course, once a month we link up with them. Now, if you don't know by now, the Muslim Family Law Hub is an educational tool, and it's really about advocating for equitable Muslim family law outcomes in South Africa. The platform provides resources to help Muslims, particularly women, navigate both Islamic and South African family law. It's really a tool to empower. So if you haven't done so by now, head on to their website. It's muslimfamilylawhub.org. muslimfamilylawhub.org. Now, we know that in constitutional democracies like South Africa, Muslim minorities often find themselves at the intersection of two legal systems, state law and Islamic law. Now, this unique position presents distinct challenges, particularly in matters of family law, because Muslims have to navigate the complexities of adhering to their faith-based practices while also complying with the country's state legal framework. Now, today we are addressing a topic which many women can identify, and unfortunately this is the case that many women can identify with. So it's certainly a topic that will resonate with many of you. We are going to be talking about the significant challenge that women face in South Africa when they are trying to secure child maintenance for their dependent children. And on the line with us, joining us today is Fatima Isop. She's one of the directors on the board of the Muslim Family Law Hub. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Isop. Welcome. Shukran for joining us.
Wa alaikum salam, Khadija, and thanks again for having us on air this morning.
Then we also have Pratima Osman. Pratima is a former magistrate and now a family law mediator. Pratima, good morning and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning to you, Khadija. Thank you very much for having me. I'm looking forward to this. Thank you.
One of the reasons why we do it, and of course have an expert like yourself in South African law, and then of course Fatima, who is an expert also in Muslim law and South African law, is exactly because of this particular intersection that we spoke about. So we'll start off this discussion with asking Fatima what the Islamic position is on maintenance. This is after divorce.
Yes, thank you, Khadija, and I think this is one area where we can really see the intersection between the two systems of law and how they differ quite a bit, actually. So in Islamic law, as you know, during the marriage, the husband is responsible for nafakaing or maintaining the wife, but also for the children of the marriage, right? So that's the position in Islamic law. And then upon divorce, the husband is responsible to nafaka his wife. The general position is that he's only responsible to nafaka during the iddah period, and then generally after that he is not responsible for the wife, but he remains responsible for his children, right? And that's up until the children are able to support themselves, and that is the position in terms of Islamic law. But as I've explained repeatedly in previous programs, Islamic law, the Sharia, is not generally applicable in South Africa. And this is something that we generally find a problem with, is that upon divorce, the husband, or before even a divorce, the husband will either weaponize this idea of maintenance of the children and will tell the wife, for instance, that if you leave me, I'm not going to support the children. Or he might say something to her to the effect that if you leave me, then in terms of the Sharia, I will be the one who has complete guardianship and custody and care of those children, and you won't have the children. And many women who will remain in an abusive marriage because they are scared of leaving that marriage, because they believe the husband when he says that in terms of the Sharia, if you leave me or if you get a fasakh, then I'm the one who's going to get to keep the children and you won't see the children. And that I constantly have to remind women that you cannot do that. Right? There's no way, because in South Africa, and Pratima will speak to this now, that in South Africa there's a principle, the best interest of the child. That is the principle that will always prevail where children are concerned, right? And so first of all, in South Africa, both parents share equal guardianship of their children. And there's no way that a court will allow a father to keep the children away from the mother. Because that is not in the best interest of the child. And historically, we used to have something called custody. It's now called contact and care. So under South African law now, you have the situation where both parties will share contact and care of those minor children, and that there's no way a father can use the Sharia to keep the children away from the mother. And in fact, I'm going to ask Pratima to speak to this also with respect to maintenance. Pratima, in terms of South African law, we know that it's not only the father who's then responsible for the maintenance of that child after divorce. And maybe you can speak to what the position is under South African law.
Thank you.
Thank you, Fatima. I think that's a very, very important point. First of all, I want to agree with you that the kind of tactics that are adopted by some people in regard to taking the children away is completely not permissible. And you correct, both parents share guardianship. The only time a child would be, let's say this, if the child was to be placed with the father or so, would be if there was evidence of the mother being completely unable to deal with the children. The further principle is that the father and the mother are responsible for the maintenance of the child, especially where the mother may be working and earns whatever she earns, and the father is working. The law actually says that both parents are responsible for the maintenance of the child. Further, removing a child from one parent or the other actually interferes with the right of the child to have access to both parents. So I think we must be less afraid of those threats and understand that the law is there to see to the best interest of the children. And that has a whole lot of factors, such as where the parents are, where the children are most comfortable. Are the living conditions good? Will there be provision for medical and schooling and accommodation and food where the children may be placed? But even as maintenance, the Maintenance Act says every person who has the legal duty, and here we talk about the children, to maintain them, that person cannot escape it and say, I'm not going to maintain the children if the children go with you. That is not permitted in law. So we must be very clear that any person who is required to be maintaining the children has a duty to support those children. Further, we need to understand that the Act says maintenance for the children is not a luxury. It's meant for proper living, and that includes the provision of food, clothing, accommodation, medical care, and education. And those are very important elements, because in terms of those elements, when one goes to the maintenance court, one can submit information which says, this is what the food costs me a month. This is what the clothing is going to cost me every 6 months or so. This is how much our rental is going to be. I need a contribution to be able to house the children. The one child has got severe medical issues, and there would be special mention of that. And then, of course, the education, which is vital. So those are the kinds of aspects that we look at in regard to the maintenance of children.
So so Khadija,
Yes.
So that's a very important point, is that if you're married by Islamic law, once you separate, once you divorce, the mother needs to understand that the Islamic law now no longer applies, in that the father is only responsible for the maintenance of that child. Of course, if she's not working, then it's obviously different, and then she obviously has to go to court with a list of a limited income and explain to the court that these are all the expenses at that, and she has to show that she's making the effort to kind of find a job. But at the end of the day, she is also responsible for maintaining those children, not the father only. And inevitably, what happens is it's that fortunately or unfortunately, it's still men who have the greater earning power. And so, I mean, Fatima, you can correct me if I'm wrong here. As a magistrate, in most cases, it would be the women. Women are the ones the mothers are generally the ones who access maintenance court.
Correct.
Because the fathers are defaulting.
Yes, and I think one other important aspect, you're correct that women are the main ones who will access. And what often happens is, in order to persuade the mother, for instance, in regard to maintenance, the father may say, don't go to court. I'll give you X amount of money every month, and I'm sure you can make it out on that. That's not the issue. The issue is that when you have an order, it is vital that you get an order, because if that person, for instance, next month decides, no, I'm going to pay you 200 and not 5,000, you have a remedy. And that remedy is open to you when you do not receive. So I always say to people, it's great that the father has indicated he's going to pay money every month. However, get the order, because words don't last as long as that order
Absolutely.
does. And the other big thing is that orders can be changed almost every year or every second year, depending on how the cost of living, the school clothes, the accommodation, all of those may increase. So let's just give an example. Say, for instance, the accommodation was rented at 1,500 per month, 1,500. And by the second year, it's gone up to 2,000. The mother has the right to go back to court and say, I want to vary this order. Vary means I want to change this order. These are my expenses now. And this is a very alarming thing, that I've had people come to court after a 16-year absence of receiving the first order and thinking that they were bound to this order that was handed down 16 years ago. It's not so. The orders can be changed and varied as expenses increase. And of course, it doesn't mean you're going to get everything that you want, but the court will take cognizance of that. They'll take cognizance of the father's ability to pay and what the mother's contribution is going to be. So it's vital that people understand you are allowed to go to court. You can't go to court every 3 months, for instance. But if
you find that though, I mean,
yes, we do, because people say, well, this is a cash cow. I can now go and get money whenever I want. Doesn't work that way. And also,
Fatima,
yes.
sorry to interrupt, just to maybe explain, you've been speaking about this order. I mean, so even if you are married by Muslim rights only and now you're divorced, you got a talaq or you've gotten your qasas, as a mother, you can still approach the maintenance court to apply for a maintenance order. And that would be, I mean, just to practically, you don't need a lawyer. You can go to your nearest magistrate's court and there'd be a maintenance officer, isn't it? Well, if you could maybe just explain to the listeners, how does it work on a very practical level?
Okay,
She's now got a talaq and she needs money for a 5-year-old and a 10-year-old.
Right. So the mother of the 5-year-old and 10-year-old will go to the nearest magistrate's court, where if there is a maintenance court, that's fine. But in the law says every magistrate's court is a maintenance court. So for instance, you're living in and I'm just guessing now, a rural area. You don't have to go and find out if there is a maintenance. You just go there and you say you want to apply for maintenance. Then what happens is, what you need to take along is an address for the father. So it can be a work address or it can be a home address. The reason for that is because the court has to issue a notice to the father to say, you have to come to court on so-and-so date. There's been an application for maintenance. Please bring along your copy of your ID book, 3 months bank statements, and your expenses. Now, the mother also should take along the copy, if she can get a copy of the divorce order from the Muslim organization. She needs to also...
a talaq certificate would suffice.
That's right. And can I also just say, and I know this doesn't apply mostly in Islamic communities, But people, even where they are having a child out of wedlock, can go to
Yes,
court and apply for
that's
maintenance.
that's
So it's
right.
not
That's right.
restricted only to people who are divorced. So then the mother would also take along the copies of the children's birth certificates, a copy of her ID, and she doesn't have to make copies. She can take it there, the court will make the copies, right? She needs to list her expenses. And if, for instance, she's renting accommodation, she must take along a copy of the lease or the agreement as to what she's going to pay every month. And if there are medical conditions, for instance, one of the children may be not very well, then she must take along whatever the doctor's reports might be or what they've said to her the child's needs are, and she must go to court. And that she should do on the first day or the first time she goes to court. Then
Mm.
they'll say to her, we're going to invite the father, and you must be back in court in 2 weeks' time or 3 weeks' time. It's very, very, very critical that she must have the address of the father.
Okay.
Yes,
The
otherwise they
work,
can't get hold of
Yeah.
him
Yeah.
correct,
to send the
correct,
notice.
correct.
Yeah.
And if he
And well,
doesn't,
a work address suffices as well.
yes, it will. The law was changed to permit the work address as well. So that's perfect. If he doesn't arrive on that day, the court can go ahead and grant an interim order against him without his permission because he's ignored the fact that he got a notice to come to court. And
Okay.
that's a very dangerous thing because it could be that the mother will say, I'm afraid he's not going to pay. Can we just do it against his salary?
Oh.
And the court will grant it. They'll grant what
Yes.
we
A
call a
garnishing.
garnishing order. That's right.
That's right.
And that will go to the employer, and the employer is forced by law to deduct. And the mother
To
must
pause
see,
there, Pratima, to just pause because that's quite a lot we're giving the listeners. So
yes,
basically, we're telling him to come, he gets notice from the court to arrive on a particular day. She's now
correct,
set out what she needs in terms of income for her
correct,
to support these children. And if he
correct,
doesn't come on that day, the court can grant an order against him in his absence. And
correct,
even more than that, the court can grant a garnishee order, which is
correct,
basically an order telling his employer that before you
correct.
pay his salary of 10,000 rand a month, you
Whatever,
must take
yeah.
off the maintenance of one and a half
That's
or
right.
2,000 and pay it
That's
to the
right.
mother of the children.
That's
But,
correct. That's absolutely vital. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Khadija?
No, I just wanted to also ask at this point because it's so important. I mean, we do need to go for a break, but I want to just clarify something. So yes, we speak about the many challenges, and yes, we know anecdotally it is often said that that the maintenance system favors men. This is something that often comes up, that it's very, very difficult to enforce child support payments. But what I'm getting from this is that there's a clear process that needs to be followed, and if this
Oh,
process
yes.
is followed, because there's a legal framework, there's something binding, there's law, and somebody like yourself that is in that position as a family law mediator. So before we go for a break, let me just quickly ask you this question. So now we know that this impacts women no matter what their financial position may be. So whether it's a professional woman or whether it's somebody who's really, really dependent on this maintenance. So
Yes.
it's possible to pay a lawyer to guide one through the process. Is what's ideal, to get a lawyer to take one through the process? And if one cannot pay a lawyer to do this, what are your options? Is it just to go straight to the court?
Khadija, if I may answer that, let me just say to you, all family law courts in South Africa don't need a lawyer. You
Okay.
don't need a lawyer for maintenance either. So for me, if you understand the process, and this is what I do in my consultancy, I explain to people what the process, as you correctly said, it's definitely a process. Then you go armed with this information and you don't need a lawyer. The only time I can think that you will ever need a lawyer is if you are dealing with millions and possibly, I really don't think it's necessary. In the courts where I presided in Kailicha, none of my people came to court with it. There were very, very, very few. Like I can count 3 on my fingers. They didn't have lawyers, and we dealt with their matters in court with the maintenance officer, and they walked away knowing that this is the one other important thing. The mothers must have a banking account. Don't ever take maintenance monies in your hand, because that creates, first of all, it creates friction. And secondly, it's you have to track the amount of money that's being paid. So, and the banking account will show and reflect exactly what you receive. It'll also show exactly when he doesn't pay. You understand? And that is used as evidence when you want to go to court and say, my ex-husband is not paying for this.
Yeah.
It's a vital issue.
So it's very,
So
very
people don't
important.
necessarily have
Yes.
bank accounts.
Yeah.
Very important.
It
Open a
again,
bank account.
again highlighting, yes, as you mentioned, the importance of following the process, that there is a process in place, and if this process is followed, there will be success or some sort of response or some sort of resolve on the other side of that. Very, very important discussion we are having with Pratima Osman, who is a former magistrate and now a family law mediator, and Fatima Isopo, the director on the board of the Muslim Family Law Hub. Today, we are focusing on maintenance challenges that women often experience when trying to secure maintenance for their dependent children. This, of course, post-divorce. We are speaking to the team from the Muslim Family Law Hub, as we do once a month, addressing the topic how women in South Africa, and I suppose the challenges that women face when trying to secure child maintenance for their dependent children. Now, you will recall that the last time we spoke about divorce and options in as far as divorce is concerned, exactly because we realize that in constitutional democracies like South Africa, Muslims find themselves at this particular intersection of two legal systems, that's state law and Islamic law. So it's really about navigating this space and about understanding and acknowledging and recognizing the challenges that particularly Muslim women face while also complying with the state legal framework. We want to adhere to our faith-based practices. So on the line with us this morning, we also have Pratima Osman, who is a former magistrate and now a family law mediator, taking us through the legal framework, to the South African framework. And so, of course, before the break, Fatima, you were telling us in terms of the Islamic process and what that entails, and what is of course allowed in as far as maintenance is concerned. Pratima, I think there's one or two other points also that some of our listeners would also asked about, and this is when it comes to the process, that yes, even if the process is set in motion, it can be quite slow and frustrating, and there's often long waiting periods between hearings and enforcement. Why is this the case, and what then happens to women? Is this considered, that what happens to women's financial stability in the meantime, and in terms of seeing to these dependent children?
Yes, thank you for that question. I think it's a very important question. I have to agree that the processes do take time. The issue is, of course, that we find people come to court unprepared and not really knowing what it is that they, on their sides, are meant to bring along and do. So for me, what I go through great pains to explain to people is what the process is about, and that's a very practical process. So when I said earlier on, you need to take along certain documents, those documents are to illustrate that you're saying you've got 2 children, and that is proof that you've got the children. Then you have to bring something that says the children are at school and these are their fees. And that would be in the form, for instance, of a letter from the school to say, this is what the fees are, this is what the stationery is going to cost. And there may even be a uniform demand from the school. And that's also information that the courts can use. Then, very importantly, even the applicant, the mother, needs to bring 3 months bank statements. And if she's never had an account, that's a good time to go and open an account. But then she can also get a letter from the bank, or they call it a account confirmation, which says this account was opened yesterday and she's going to court today, and that she's had no income or no money to put in the account. The other thing, by the way, is where, and I know a lot of women do things to be able to earn a bit of money so that they can support themselves. So they may, for instance, make cook sisters and sell it to the public, or they sell clothing from the house. Whatever the situation is where you are making money for yourself, you need to provide some proof of what those monies are. So say, for instance, somebody starts selling clothing, and she can show that she bought clothing to the value of 1,000 and she sold it for 1,500 rand. She should bring that kind of book along with, because I'm assuming people keep records of it. That's very important. So when, for instance, the father comes to court and he says, no, but you're earning money, you're selling clothing, you've been doing this, don't tell the court you got no money, then she can provide proof. So that's the next step. She takes all of that.
Sorry, Pratima, I think this is very important, not to interrupt your thought, but Khadija, I think this is to do with this kind of financial empowerment, which is one of the objectives that the hub has, is that women need to, just as something as simple as Pratima is saying, keeping a bank, having your own bank account. It's essential. Growing your own credit worthiness. Showing that example that Pratima says, that's very typical with the father. Maar jy verkoop baie klere, you've got money, but she's not necessary. She needs to have a break. Our women are like amazing entrepreneurs within the community, I know, but they're not necessarily keeping proper records and in their bank account. And from what Pratima is saying, this is one of the delays in maintenance claims. I'm sure there are other scenarios as well, but one of the main issues is that people don't necessarily have all the paperwork in place when they come to court, and then it just delays the proceedings, and the proceedings get postponed. And men who are in a stronger position, they play on that. So the more you have your ducks in a row, the better it is. Sorry, Pratima, I was interrupting you, but I thought that was very important.
It is very important, and you're correct. We must empower ourselves as women, but we also have to take responsibility. I don't think that, for instance, a home baking, even baking and stuff like that, is going to earn you the kind of money that we're going to report you to the taxman. I doubt that. In fact, I've never encountered that. But what I did find is that the fathers would say, you earn a lot of money. Look, you can buy meat and chicken every week, and look at and then you have nothing to show. Actually, what I earn is 100 rand, and I've spent 50 rand on chicken. So it's vital that we take control of that side of our lives. It's very, very important. And the bank accounting, as I said, is to track what your expenses are, and also when you start receiving maintenance, that you can actually show, you know what, he skipped month 2, 3, and 4, and that you can apply to get the back maintenance. So there's that process as well. So when you are applying, it's vital to go with, I always say, be truthful about it. It's no use trying to hide things, because there are ways and means. If, for instance, the father says she has a house in her name and she's not telling you she's achieving rental, we can pick it up. There's a special report that we can do that will pick up every single transaction that the mother and the father are responsible for. So I think it's important to be truthful, take along as many, when I say take along proof of expenses, I don't mean the little slippies that you get at the till, at the ShopRite or wherever. You should be able to say, you know what, I spend 500 rand on food, 200 rand I spend on medication for baby number 2, because baby number 2 is always sick. And there's a way, when you arrive with that kind of information, that the court will get the father to contribute towards that medical cost as well. So the important thing is to always have your information, and as Fatima has now said, have your ducks in a row about what your expenses are, what your needs are for the children. And if you are of a divorce, of course, you are entitled to what we call spousal maintenance as well. Now, Spousal maintenance is a different maintenance application on the same file, but for the ex-wife. Because if, for instance, she never worked in her life, but she's got to look after these children and she helped the husband to achieve some form of success in his career, or even if it's not a great success, she is entitled to be maintained.
Oh.
And she's entitled to be maintained to the extent that she can't provide for herself. And that also means there has to be certain information. I'm not sure whether we're just going to focus on child maintenance now or also look at spousal maintenance, but that is also available to an ex-wife.
I think it's important that you mentioned that, Pratima. I really do think, and like you said earlier on, or what's implied earlier on, is that of course within reason. So even if one wants to claim child maintenance, it has to be within reason from the ex-husband. But maybe just some brief words on this, because this is a reality. I suppose
Yes.
for many women, how do you take care of your children if you cannot take
Yes.
care of yourself?
Of
So I suppose
yourself.
there's a different there's also a process involved here in terms of proving that you are perhaps looking for something, looking to do something to generate some form of
Yes.
income. But in the meantime, what do women do?
So, if, for instance, women are wanting to get spousal maintenance, they would have to show, first of all, that the husband or the ex-husband paid for a lot of the money that was utilized or the services that were utilized, and especially in terms of the wife, what her needs are personally. So she may need money for sanitary towels, she may need money for clothing. She would also need money for food and electricity and water. And if she has a car, for instance, that she has to, and this is more child maintenance, but if she is running a car and the car is in her name, but she hasn't got fuel money, she can ask for a contribution to that. So it's a fairly limited prospect in terms of spousal maintenance, but it is available. The other thing is that when a woman is able to look after herself, she can be denied spousal maintenance because it's not a case of because I lived with you and got your children, you must maintain me. If the woman, for instance, has taken steps that she has learned or she's trained herself, she's now able to handle a job, she can earn money with the job and look after herself. It doesn't mean she's going to get spousal maintenance. And again, you're correct, Khadija, that it definitely is based on the means that each of those parties have. So, for instance, if the mother comes to court and says, "Now I want 10,000 rand per month just for each child," and he only earns 30,000 rand, he's going to say, "I can't afford that." And then what will happen is that the maintenance officers and the court will look at that claim and say, "No, this is not affordable. That person also has to live and survive. We are reducing your amount to that." And of course, you can lodge a complaint or whatever, but I can tell you now the reality is men and women are struggling. Women more so because they have the children to look after. And so the court will be fair in regard to this is affordable, this is not, or your claim is extravagant. You understand? So the process, and in my court, it's a very, very fair process. It looks at all the evidence in regard to earnings and let me give you another example, and this often the fathers will come to court, if you don't mind, and say, "No, but I've got to pay for my car and my clothing account, and I'm going to resign from my job." That's the other one. So when the man says, "I've got to pay my clothing account," the court will say, a clothing account is a luxury. And your car, you have to get a cheaper car because we can do that. You understand? If that car payment is taking so much money that you can't afford to pay maintenance, the court can intervene. If you are paying so much for your clothing account, which is a luxury, we can say to you, we will take part of that money as your maintenance, and you will have to pay, you'll have to lengthen your period of payment or whatever. So the court has methods of taking the money that the father would pay to pay off his debt and using that for maintenance. But we try and avoid that because we all want to, at the end of the day, pay up our debt.
Yes, of
But
course.
men must just be alert that they cannot use that as an excuse to say,
And
no.
another excuse that sometimes, like when the mother remarries, and then
Yes,
the father might say, well, there's two things actually. The father might say, well, in Islamic law, you can't remarry, because if you do, I'm going to take let's say, the daughters from you, because there is a school of thought that says that if the mother remarries, then the minor daughters will revert to the care of the father. But once again, I would tell women that no, that's not applicable in South Africa.
correct.
Just because you absolutely are allowed to remarry after your talaq is finalized, or your fasakh, and you won't be able to take the children from you. And over and above that, you will remain financially responsible for those
Correct.
minor children. It doesn't become the responsibility of the stepfather, the new husband. It remains the responsibility of the biological father to
Correct.
continue paying maintenance for his children.
I think another aspect I just want to mention in terms of the maintenance of children is that, and I know the law often mentions the age of 18.
Oh,
It's
that's
not
right.
so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the maintenance of a child is until that child is able to support themselves. Now, what that means is if a child older than 18 wants to go to university or go and study or whatever, both parents must support that child. Both parents must contribute in respect of their means to be able to do so. So if the child only graduates, let's just say, at the age of 22, that maintenance, which would have ended at the age of 18, continues until that child finds a job and is able to work. Okay? If, however, a child chooses not to go to educate themselves and wants to sit at home, the father can refuse to maintain the child, because then the child is not showing any prospect of being able to support themselves. Or maybe they go to work at a construction site or a factory. That's fine. The child is still supporting themselves. The maintenance can stop. So that's also very important. So it's only a lifetime thing if the child is unable to look after themselves due to illness or
Illness,
like
yeah.
that. Yeah.
Disability or
Yeah.
something.
Disability or something.
Yeah.
So I think that's a very important thing as well. The other thing is that if for instance, the other aspect I want to go back to is if the husband or the ex-husband threatens to resign, that is a punishable offense. It's a criminal offense.
Oh,
And that can be taken up with the maintenance court, who will then refer that matter to the criminal courts. You cannot resign to escape your responsibility. You understand? So
And
that's
in
a
fact,
very,
sorry, Pratima, even if you deliberately fail to pay the maintenance according to
correct.
the maintenance order, it's also
Correct.
the mother can also get you
To court.
arrested for that as well.
Correct. So the arrest shouldn't go before you come to the maintenance court and inform the court that this person hasn't paid for 6 months. The court will then issue the warrant of arrest, and then he will be arrested by the police. So I think the mother mustn't try and effect the arrest, go to the cops and say he hasn't paid. It is far better to come to court and let the court issue the warrant of arrest and let them do it. So you can see that the Maintenance Act and the maintenance process is geared to protect the interests of the children. It's very, very critical. We always say in all aspects around children, their best interests must be kept up.
yeah.
So
Because
yeah,
ultimately it is about that. We realize that I'm trying to take in as much as possible of this, and we apologize to our listeners. On another occasion, perhaps we can take your questions. As is, unfortunately, we wanted to get a sense of what the landscape is like, and so
yes,
also in terms of process and in terms of
yes,
what really are the challenges and what are the red flags, etc., and what are women's options. And I think the starting point being that as you said earlier on, Pratima, that you don't require a lawyer for this. That
No,
yes,
you don't.
the process may sometimes be tedious, but it's absolutely
Yes.
important for us to follow these processes as women, also
Correct.
to follow these processes that are in place. Fatima, I'm going to ask you, maybe now we have about a minute or two left, to perhaps just give your concluding comments quickly.
So yes, so just also say, as you know, Pritima, we have the website, and on the
Yeah.
website, for instance, we have various resources. And if you go under the divorce resource tab, you will see there's a form there, a maintenance form. But having
Correct.
listened to Pratima this morning, I think what the hub needs to do is, in with the help of Pratima, is maybe just Pratima, we have a checklist for
Yes.
maintenance, like we have a checklist for
Yes.
marriage, divorce, a checklist of all the documents you need to
Correct.
take with you when you go to maintenance court, so that our
Yes.
whoever uses the website will have that
Yes.
checklist printed out
Yes.
and then tick it off as they go along. So
Yeah.
I found this extremely useful, because I think that for us is a resource that we will need to upload
So
Yeah.
I've
onto the Muslim
actually,
Family Law Hub.
yeah, I've actually prepared that because of my own work with people. I've prepared a checklist for people, and even, when children are left with their grandparents, how those grandparents can go and apply for maintenance. I've
As
actually
well,
on
yes.
those checklists. So I
Yeah.
use it in my consultancy. It helps a lot.
Because as we said previously, and this is something that comes up when it comes to Islamic law, then the lines are often a little bit more blurred. But in
Yeah.
terms of
That's
South African law, there are clear guidelines. There's law is
Correct.
in place, and of course, in terms of there would be deadlines as well, and there's repercussions if you don't obey the law.
Yes.
And I think that's incredibly important. Just a reminder to our listeners that you can head on to the website. It's muslimfamilylawhub.org, muslimfamilylawhub.org, as we said. And yes, there's a checklist. Go on there and you can see that it's that the checklists are there for marriage, divorce, inheritance, really to facilitate these journeys. We say thank you so much to Pratima Osman, who's was a magistrate and now a family law mediator, and Dr. Fatima Isupa, director on the board of the Muslim Family Law Hub, who joined us this morning and spoke about these challenges that women experience when trying to secure maintenance for their dependent children. I'm sure we'll have to continue this because there's much more that needs to be unpacked. But thank you so much to the both of you. Have a beautiful Thursday.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Khadija. Thank you
Khadija.
very much.
Assalamualaikum.
Thank you.